Captain Stacy Jurt. I'm currently a reserve officer stationed at Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania, about a few miles north of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I consider myself Taiwanese American. My parents were born in Taiwan, my grandparents were born in China, but I was born in California. I grew up in the Los Angeles County area, grew up in South Pasadena. Southern California is wonderful. It's a paradise. My school was incredibly diverse, and I didn't know discrimination. I didn't know a lot of the developments that were happening outside of my area. So in high school, I was definitely a stereotypical nerd, but one of the things that I challenged myself with was speech and debate. I attended a Rotary speech contest as a sophomore in sophomore in high school, and I did horrible. It was absolutely embarrassing, and I think I won a consolation prize for just being the worst candidate. And I decided then that public speaking was something that I was going to work on. And so I joined the speech and debate team. I became president and competed in our region. I ran track and cross country in high school, but I'll be the first to tell you that I wasn't any good. So my dream was to become a U.S. ambassador, so focusing on international studies. When I went to the University of California, I was an international studies major and actually was selected for a Rotary ambassadorial scholarship to go to Ghana for a year. That was probably one of the most eye-opening, life-changing experiences of my life. One of the reasons why I just chose to major in international security affairs was because there's so much outside of the bubble of Southern California that's going on, whether it's genocide, hunger, poverty, regional conflict. And so I think moving out of Southern California to go to grad school is really eye-opening for me, and I wish I was better prepared. Prior to that, I had been maybe a little bit sheltered, a bit naive, and being in Ghana for 3 days, I was mugged my first day there, and the embassy said, hey, maybe 19-year-old, you probably shouldn't live by yourself. So I ended up living with a defense attaché and his family, so a Navy commander and his wife. She was also previously in the Navy, and it was my first exposure to military service, and so I consider myself a pseudo Navy brat for a year, and that's really what opened my eyes up to both the intel field as well as the military service. And for undergrad, I actually decided to apply to several schools on the East Coast because I wanted to get out of my comfort zone. I applied to the National Intelligence University, a DoD school, Georgetown, Yale, and Johns Hopkins, and I was accepted to all of them, waitlisted for Yale. One of the nice things at NIU is they offered me a GS-7 salary, a security clearance, and health benefits, so I definitely decided to take that. I did that in the daytime, and I was also accepted to Georgetown on a half-tuition scholarship, so I did that at night, so I did 2 master's degrees at the same time. So NIU is a DoD-funded university. It was located at Bolling Air Force Base when I was there, and it was about 80% military, 20% civilian. I went as a DoD civilian, and it was also 80% male. One of the things that I certainly noticed and wanted to challenge myself when I was there is I wanted to join the military because I felt like there needed to be more diversity, and it was also something that I've always wanted to do. My parents, as immigrants, have really lived the American dream, and I'm just so grateful. When you look at other first world countries, the requirements for citizenship are very lofty. For example, in Japan, you have to be able to speak the language and have lived there for several decades, but in America, they just trust you. And I think that was what I was so grateful for. So going to NIU, being exposed to the military, being exposed to intel, really helped me identify that I was very committed to becoming an MI officer. While I was at Georgetown was also almost 80% military, also 80% male, and some of my professors were General Montgomery Meigs, whose great-grandfather founded Arlington National Cemetery, and the exposure that I had there was phenomenal. So in 2011, I received a direct commission from the Army. The Army basically looked at my resume and said, okay, you have 2 master's degrees, a foreign language, and a top secret clearance. We're gonna make you a second lieutenant. That was incredibly daunting task. Even though I direct commissioned to the reserves, it was a very big uphill climb because I was assigned to a strategic intel unit where we drilled in suits, so I couldn't wear the uniform, I couldn't read rank, I couldn't pass my PT test. Even though I ran track and cross country in high school, I couldn't run my 2-miler. And so that was a really daunting task. The first time I went to military training was about 8 months after I had pinned second lieutenant, and I was lost in the sauce. I probably should have been dropped immediately, but I was very fortunate to have excellent mentors and wonderful companions that really pushed me through. So I can now proudly say that I can finish my 2-miler. In fact, after deployment in 2013, I ran my first half marathon, my first marathon, my first 50K, my first 50-miler, and triathlon. And I'll be leading my unit, my company, to the Army 10-miler this year. So coming back from deployment to Afghanistan in 2013, the transition was difficult. I started participating with 2 veterans groups, the Mission Continues and Team Red, White, and Blue. Team Red, White, and Blue, their mission is to integrate military and civilians and to kind of get over some of the stigmas that a lot of the civilian community has about the military, and so they do that through social events as well as a lot of physical fitness, and that's really where I started to get my running rhythm down. The Mission Continues is for service members that after they leave the military, they kind of miss that thread of having a sense of duty and a sense of service. So what the Mission Continues does is, in different communities all throughout the nation, they come up with community service projects, whether it is building park benches or cleaning up a lake, things like that. So last month I was actually sponsored to go to the Women's Veteran Summit with the Mission Continues, and that brought 75 women from all over the nation, and we went to a low-income school in Northeast DC, and we cleaned it up, painted murals, made garden beds, and did a lot of work with the community there. What I'd like to say, and what I would challenge all young women to do, is to always challenge yourself. When I first put on the uniform, I was told that I would fail. And I was told that I would fail by many of my loved ones, which is a little crazy, but when the only option that you have is to be strong, you really show your light. And joining the military was probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. The sense of courage and honor and integrity that I've learned by being an officer is priceless, and I don't think you can ever learn that in a school. So what I definitely learned also is that leadership comes in so many different forms. When I first commissioned, I looked around and I didn't see people that looked like me. I thought I had to look a certain way or behave a certain way to be a leader, and that's absolutely not true. There's so many different types of leadership, and you just have to find your own.